All right, welcome back to Take It to the House. This is Coach Drew Robison and Alex Deits. We're talking NFL football this segment. Alex, we just finished week 14 of the NFL season.
So sad.
There's a bye week, and we have 4 weeks left. It is coming down to crunch time for solidifying playoffs. Teams are starting to get maybe a little bit mathematically eliminated.
Right.
You've got some of those unique situations like the NFC North where every team practically has a great record, and then you've got divisions like the NFC West and the NFC South where everybody's kind of hovering around 500.
Right.
Of course, I say everybody. With the South, it's just the Falcons and the Bucks. But the entire West division is kind of hovering right in there. So those divisions are probably going to be really scrapping for division titles and might not even be able to wiggle into a wild card, because it looks like probably the Commanders and a couple of North teams are going to get the wild cards in the NFC. In the AFC, we still have pretty much the Bills and the Chiefs separating themselves, but
Right.
but those scrappy Steelers just keep
10-3.
figuring it out. Yeah. So I have added, the Vikings back and the Steelers back to our table of honor here. I probably should have my Buccaneers hat on, but, one of those scrappy West teams is the Arizona Cardinals, and I rarely get a chance to put on my 1920 tribute of the Chicago Cardinals hat. So anyway, putting that on. Packers-Lions was the Thursday night game, and another close, classic game. It seems like the Lions and the Chiefs the Chiefs get the doink win off the upright. The Lions and the Chiefs just keep finding ways to squeak out wins, and that's just the way the good NFL teams are. They squeak out close wins.
I totally agree. Yeah, I mean, you feel like every week they create a new way to win, and you can get mad as a fan or whatever, but that's how good teams win. They find a way to win, even by the luckiest of circumstances. At the end of the day, a win is a win in the NFL. And, the Lions and the Chiefs are two of the best teams that just find a way. So you got to give them credit, no doubt.
So the Packers still, they slipped to 9-4, but they're still sitting in a good spot for a wild card. But those Vikings are 11-2.
Yeah.
And they're in second place.
Jeez.
As they did me a favor by beating the Falcons. The Falcons are on a skid. I think it's 4 in a row, that they have lost. The Bucks have won 3 in a row in the South. I get annoyed with the Chiefs, but honestly, the Bucks are squeaking out wins too. I know the 28-13 over the Raiders doesn't seem like squeaking it out, but Baker did turn the ball over 3 times. The defense was okay, but the Raiders are bad. Their quarterback got hurt, and I think it was a quarterback that hadn't played in a while that came back in, and they turned the ball over and made it easy on our defense. So the Bucks have got a challenge with the Chargers coming up this week, because the Chargers are clearly a very good team, and I don't even know who the Falcons have yet. But you've got in this NFC wildcard race, I mentioned the NFC West, but the Seahawks are separating themselves a little bit as they get to 8-5. With a big win over the Cardinals. The Rams are hanging in there with a big win at home over the Bills. We were looking at the Rams and the Bengals a few weeks ago and saying these teams are kind of in a hole.
Right.
The Bengals just couldn't rally. I know they got a win on Monday night over the Cowboys, but the Bengals are pretty much still out of it. The Rams have kind of rallied, and I feel like the Rams may just find a way to claw back in there and overtake maybe the Commanders, or maybe even the Packers on that third wild card spot. But they're only one game back. They could still win the division, as they're only one game back from the Seahawks. But the Rams are now 7-6. The 49ers win again, but they're 6-7. So the Niners are just 2 games back.
Yeah.
The Rams are just 1 game back. The Cardinals also slipped to just 6-7. So it's like that 1,600 meters when all four runners are just right there in the pack.
You don't know.
And I don't even know if the person in the lead at the beginning of the last lap has an advantage or a disadvantage.
Right.
But yeah, in the AFC, you've got the West with the Chargers at 8-5. Clearly, the Chiefs are they already locked up the division with that win to go 12-1 as they beat the Chargers. But the Chargers at 8-5, you've got the Raiders are out of it.
Yep.
The Browns in the North are now out of it. The Bengals are 5-8, but I think they're out of it. And the Broncos are still 8-5. They had the bye week. The Ravens are 8-5. The Texans are still 8-5. So you've got those 8-5 teams that are all still scrapping. And in the AFC South, the the Texans are probably going to favored to win the division,
right? Because
that's just a weak division. The Jags are 3-10, the Titans are 3-10, and the Colts are 6-7.
Yeah.
But any particular teams that kind of popped out at you this week that you want to dive into?
Yeah, I think just the Rams. They feels like they just play up to their competition, or they can play down sometimes. I know several weeks ago they hosted the Rams at home, and they hosted the Dolphins at home, and that was just a game. I think Tua's first game back, you're at home, long road trip, and you get in a slugfest and lose 17-20 or something ugly. And then, but a game like this week, Matt Stafford's amazing. The offense is clicking against a really good Bills team who has a good defensive line. And, hang 44 on them. It's oh my gosh, when healthy, when at their best, they can play with about anyone. And so that was just amazing to watch. It was really good TV. And then,
if you're the Bills, does that game concern you in terms of giving up that number of 44 points?
I think the 44 points is a little concerning. Losing to the Rams is not super concerning. They're a really good team, but letting a team hang 44 on you is a little bit of a problem. I know there's a lot of weapons on the Rams, but nonetheless, when you're a top team in the NFL, points matter, yards matter.
Puka and Cooper Kupp are
what a duo.
Those two guys, you know who those guys remind me of? They remind me of a younger Steve Smith.
Oh, wow.
With the Panthers.
Yeah.
Not a physically, you got a Mike Evans that's just a physically dominant presence, or a big tight end that does roll. But, those two guys are relatively smaller or average sized dudes.
Right.
They've got good speed, but not great speed.
Right.
None of them are Tyreek Hill, but it's these guys run routes, they catch passes, they're clutch.
Right.
And they run great routes, they get their separation, and they fight for the ball in the air.
Yeah, no, it's crazy. Yeah. Whatever receiver coach over there deserves a pay raise, because and Cooper Kupp and Nakua, man, you really are right with their route running. That's how he creates so much space. So it's been impressive to watch for sure. And then I sound like a broken record, but I really want the Bengals to somehow find a way to sneak into the playoff. I think they're at the 10 spot right now. They got to hope. I think the Dolphins kind of choke it away a little bit. And Indianapolis.
Well, the Bengals come to Nashville this week.
That's right.
To play the Titans. So if they can't beat the Titans, they're in trouble. But they're 5-8. They could get to 6-8, and theoretically we got 17 games now, so they could get over 500 if they run the table.
And then I'd say the other team that's kind of impressing me is the Steelers. Russell Wilson revitalizing his career up in Pittsburgh, and I feel like they're a very dangerous team. And when they stymie a team like the Ravens, who have some great weapons and can score at will, that puts me on alert. Okay, this team could be for real. So,
Russell Wilson, it's interesting because the Steelers do play the Eagles this week, and the Steelers, Russell Wilson and Jalen Hurts are very similar style quarterbacks. Jalen Hurts is probably a little more physical, but just in terms of Russell's probably a little bit better passer.
Right.
But Jalen Hurts and Russell Wilson are not prototypical quarterbacks. No. They're both just gutsy leaders.
Right.
They're both, very smart quarterbacks. Situationally, they do the right thing. They tend to protect the football, and they take what the defense gives you. They don't just take off and run for no reason. But it's really interesting to see that. But also, to your point about Russell Wilson, it's fascinating that Russell Wilson found such a good fit in Seattle. And all those years when he won a Super Bowl and even lost a Super Bowl, you look at those Seahawk years and everybody thinks about the Legion of Doom, right? Everybody thinks about the defense and how great they were, and they were.
Right.
But he had Marshawn Lynch.
Yeah.
He had Pete Carroll. He had a team around him that didn't. I don't think Russell Wilson ever for a moment in Seattle had the same thought that probably Josh Allen or maybe even Patrick Mahomes has on a regular basis of, I gotta put this team on my back and carry everybody. And that's a good thing for a quarterback not to have to do that. In Denver, maybe he pressed a little bit and maybe he did feel that a little bit. And I also think just as if you look at Sean Payton, you think about Drew Brees' career. And now you're looking at Bo Nix and you're going, okay, the problem really isn't Sean Payton with Russell Wilson. You're looking at Russell Wilson now at Pittsburgh and you look back at Russell Wilson with the Seahawks and you say, well, maybe the problem wasn't Russell Wilson either. Maybe it just wasn't a fit. Russell Wilson and Sean Payton just were not a fit. And Bo Nix fits with what Sean Payton wants, not to mention the fact that, a lot of times, not a lot, but occasionally, we'll see an RG3 and I know he was special and different, but you'll see an RG3 or you'll see a young quarterback come in, and then you'll start to see mid-season or certainly by season 2, defenses are starting to figure out, okay, I know how to disrupt this guy. So I'm not looking forward to, or do I want to see Bo Nix fall, but I think I'm just trying to make the point that Bo Nix and Sean Payton are on the same page. And with Sean Payton, with as much experience as he has, I think he can anticipate those defensive strategic moves, the blitzes and so forth, the coverages that people are going to throw at Bo Nix, that I think Sean Payton's going to be able to stay a step ahead of that kind of thing. You get the feeling with Sean Payton, you get the feeling with Sean McVay, and of course, Matt Stafford. I don't think there's a quarterback more talented with arm talent than I've ever seen than Matt Stafford. But you see those coaches along, and Andy Reid with Patrick Mahomes, who's incredibly talented. But you look at Andy Reid, you look at Sean McVay, and you look at Sean Payton, and you go, these are offensive dudes. These are offensive guys that you don't get better than those guys, and the way they game plan and so forth. And so that makes a big difference. All right, well, looking into this next week, Steelers, Eagles, interesting game, probably not all that meaningful other than we'll just get to see 2 playoff teams previewed. The loser probably isn't going to fall off that much. You've also got another similar game, 2 conferences, but Bills-Lions. So you look at Steelers, Eagles, and Bills-Lions, you're like, well, that could be a Super Bowl preview. But Bills-Lions, 10-3, 12-1. Steelers, Eagles, 10-3, 11-2. A huge. Let's look at some of the huge playoff implication games. The Bengals are hanging on. They've got to win. The Commanders are in a good spot, but they need to go to New Orleans and beat the Saints, who's hasn't been a very good team. The Texans are hosting the Dolphins. Now that is a fight for your life game because the Dolphins are 6-7. The Texans look like they're at the top of the division, so the Dolphins need it more. That'll be an interesting game to see how what mentality those teams bring. Are the Dolphins more desperate? Are the Texans just slightly more relaxed being at home and having a better record? We'll see. We'll see if the Chiefs, stay sharp or if they slip up against the Browns. Jameis is, who knows what Jameis is going to bring, but it's at Cleveland. It'd be really fun to see another snowy day in Cleveland, and I would love for the Chiefs to lose, but I don't know that game really means that much. Now the Rams 49ers is Thursday night. Huge game. Huge game. 49ers at home, 6-7. Rams are 7-6. 49ers still, a little banged up, but man, Kittle has looked great, and the Rams offense has looked great. So I don't know if that's going to be another shootout. But that'll be a fun primetime game, coming up on Thursday night. Patriots, Cardinals, Colts, Broncos. Again, all those teams, those games, you got one team that it really kind of matters.
Right.
You've got the other team that it really doesn't. But Cardinals need to get back to 500. If they beat the Patriots at home, they go to 7-7. The Broncos are 8-5. So they're just trying to solidify their wild card spot, but They don't need to slip up. They're playing at home against the Colts. They need that game. Bucks and Chargers. Chargers need to solidify. That game matters to the Chargers.
Yeah.
And it really matters to the Bucks as well. But with the Falcons the Bucks lose that wild card to the Falcons because they've won both head to head. So the Bucks have got to stay a game ahead to win the division. Packers, Seahawks, another big game.
NFC conference.
Bears, Vikings, not that big of a game, but it'll be a little bit interesting. But that's a Monday night game, and then we got 2 Monday night games this week. So the Falcons are at the Raiders, and the Bears are at the Vikings. So we've got 2 of the state-of-the-art stadiums on that Monday night game. Yeah. And unlike in the past, sometimes when they had the game out west, they would delay it. But it's just going to be 7 and 7:30. So you're basically going to have to do the pause like we do on college games, on Monday night and go back and forth. But gosh, Sam Darnold has looked great. Good for the Vikings, good for the Steelers. And then we got 7 teams in each conference that are going to go. I think the 6 that are, or the 3 in each conference that are on the table are pretty solid. It's going to be interesting to see which 4 teams we add in the AFC and which 4 teams we add in the NFC.
Right.
So, any final NFL thoughts on playoffs coming up or any of the games this week?
Yeah, no, just mentioning, the top teams, the Chiefs and the Bills. I mean, but at this point, like you said, they've locked the division, but home field advantage matters. So there's still something to play for right now. So, mentioning, like, you got to be careful not to stub your toe. The Bills play a great Lions team, so if they lose, it's not like they stub their toe. They're playing a great team. Whereas, like, the Chiefs, you got to make sure you stay focused. But then, just hearing a little chatter from the Eagles, do you hear about, like, A.J. Brown, like, his relationship with Jalen Hurts is soured because he's not getting the ball enough, and last year they were 10-1, and then they just absolutely fell apart at every seam. It was unbelievable, and ended up just tanking against the Bucs. Like, it didn't look like they even wanted to play. So, not to say that's going to happen this year, but there's a little locker room turmoil right now. I think Brandon Graham, their middle linebacker, acknowledged this and said this publicly. So that doesn't make it great as well. I feel like if you have some like internal things like that, you try and keep it internal.
Yeah.
And work behind the scenes, and now it's kind of out there for everyone to hear. So that is a little alarming, especially if they're having a great season. And then just, really impressed with Saquon. I know we talked about Jalen Hurts earlier. I feel like he's gotten better as the season progressed. I'd say the first 5 or 6 weeks he was turning the ball over. I feel like his decision-making has gotten a little better. And so that combination between the two, I think Saquon's really taken a lot off of him. And so I feel like he's able to make better decisions. And that's a great tandem. I mean, I really am excited to, like, watch them play this week. I just hope, like, this, the personal stuff, doesn't get in the way of them playing great football.
Yeah, and you got other teams that are kind of, in the tank. The Titans are one of them. And, it's interesting the way the NFL works and how it is such a longer season. But unlike, college football, in some ways, a lot of these players are really young.
Right.
And a lot of these players are still in the process of learning how to be a pro. And not just learning how to be a professional football player, but learning how to be a professional man.
Yeah.
And it is a hard thing to be in a situation where the season is done.
Right.
And you literally aren't, you've got individuals, and nobody will say this out loud, but you've got individuals in the locker room, in the building, in management, that literally wins are not important anymore.
Right.
All of a sudden, it's about how do I protect my career as an assistant coach, maybe as a head coach, maybe as a GM, maybe as a young player.
Right.
But how do I position myself so that I am marketable and I can continue a career in this league, whether it's with this team or another? And when you get everybody in survival of the fittest, self-interested mode, you lose what the successful teams are all about, which is about a common goal.
Right.
And one of the reasons why Bill Belichick and in college Nick Saban, one of the reasons why their culture of my way or the highway worked for so long is because people knew what to expect coming in.
Right.
And people who for years, I mean, it took a while to build it, but at a certain point, maybe after 2 Super Bowls for Belichick, people are now coming to the organization for one purpose.
Yeah.
To win a championship.
Yeah.
And it's like, that's all I'm here to do is to win a championship. And people will say, and people said this about Saban, assistant coaches for years, they would finally move on and they would say, that was the most miserable experience of my life.
Right.
But every day I didn't think about that. All I thought about was, we got to win a championship. We got to win a championship. And then you win a championship. And I think some of them even look back on it and go, yeah, it was worth it to give 3 years of my life away, but I'd never do it again.
Right.
I wouldn't do it again, even if it meant winning another championship.
Right.
Because it was so horrible. But at least they had that common focus,
right.
And it eliminates the self-preservation element of what motivates you every day.
Right.
And if you're motivated every day by, I got to keep mine, and it sounds like DJ Brown might have a little bit of that going on, it's like, do you really care how many passes you catch, or do you want to win a Super Bowl?
Right. Yeah.
Because at the end of every day, what's on your mind more? Are you thinking, I'm not getting enough balls? Or are you thinking, just win the Super Bowl, maybe? Just win the Super Bowl. And if you're focused on just win this week, do whatever you got to do to win this week, then that can trump all the self-interested stuff.
Yeah.
And, when you're, I don't want to get into, I don't know all the details of DJ Brown, but when you're DJ Brown, nobody's worried that DJ Brown is not really very good.
Right.
You're DJ Brown. So I don't care if you catch 7 passes for 235 yards, or if you catch 1 pass because they're double teaming you every play.
Right.
If they're double teaming you every play, you're probably getting your quarterback another 200 yards with other receivers because they're being double teamed.
Right.
So it just kind of I don't know, but the Eagles are not the Titans. The Eagles are in the hunt and they have a legitimate shot to get a Super Bowl this year. So we'll see how it all unfolds. The NFL is this is the really cool time of year. A couple weeks before Christmas, and this year we don't have all that big lag time in college football. So we've got the Christmas holidays are going to be filled with college playoffs, and as usual, the continued NFL wrapping up of the regular season. We get through Christmas, and I think January 20th is actually the college football championship, but we're going to have NFL playoffs and the wrapping up of the college playoffs, and then we'll get into February and have the Super Bowl, and it's just the gifts just keep on coming.
They do
with football this year,
Christmas.
So it's awesome. All right, well we will be back next week. We've got one more week before actually Christmas, and so we'll be excited to do that, and then we'll get through the holidays, and I hope everybody has a great Christmas. But we'll see you again before then next time on Take It to the House. Thanks, Alex.
Thank you.